Senator Schiff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to my colleague Alex Padilla for this legislation. Appreciate all of you testifying today. Mr. Simmons, I want to ask you about the song Beth, but you're not here for that, so I'm not going to. What I would, and I love that song. I love all your songs. And thank you for bringing my Cusimano constituents with you. What I'd like to ask you, you've been obviously performing for quite a while. When you began your career, there was a kind of understanding that I think was the rationale for this injustice that, well, if radio stations are playing your music, you're getting advertising, more people are buying your albums. Obviously, the industry has completely changed, and the way people access music has completely changed. But if you could talk a little bit about how the industry has evolved and what it means today not to be compensated. That is, I would imagine whatever promotional value you get of your songs played on the radio doesn't somehow create enough recompense to make up for the lack of being paid for those songs being played on the radio.
Well, first and foremost, what you say is so, but I want to cut to the chase, which is when we first began, we were four knuckleheads off the streets of New York who could barely spell, read, or write. We just happened by ourselves. We never knew. No one. Artists are not qualified to understand the business model. We didn't have a business manager. I didn't know that once you get a song that goes on radio, radio is not going to pay you to play the song, but they will have the right, I will say this again, they have the right to use our name and likeness, and you're talking about trademarks. You use my trademark without my permission, otherwise I'm going to take your house and your firstborn. Are you kidding me? So radio uses billboards across the country's highways of America to promote the radio stations so that people will tune into their station because they are hearing our voice on their station so they can sell advertising. And more power to you. You should be making more money, become more successful. But the new artists are not going to get their fair shake. There are barely record companies left. The entire music industry is in disarray. And all these pennies are so important, especially for tomorrow's stars who are being born today. This is for our children and for our children's children. We can't just let them out in the cold and not have a way to get paid for their hard work.
Thank you. And Mr. Huppy, I know when your son was very young, he ran for school office with the theme song, Don't Worry, Be Huppy, which was brilliant, by the way.
That is correct.
When that song is played on a streaming service, you're able to identify where the royalties should go, and as the chair was saying, do so very rapidly, very quick order. Let's say that song is played on terrestrial radio. Are there any challenges to being able to determine when that's being played, providing the same kind of mechanism for compensation that you do with the streaming services?
The mechanics behind doing that, Senator, would not be that difficult at all. As you well know, we already receive much of the data about plays and artists and songs when almost all of these FM stations rebroadcast online. So in a way, we're already paying for the digital part of their business. And the FM part of their business is the much larger part, $14 billion a year, and the mechanics of getting the payments out would be quite doable.
Thank you. Mr. Hinton, there are provisions in the bill that are designed to try to help smaller broadcasters. Tell us, if you would, why you believe those provisions are not workable. For, I think, college stations, it might be $100. For smaller stations, it might be $500. Why are those carve-outs not adequate for the smaller stations? And for the larger stations, why shouldn't they pay the compensation of the artists they're airing?
Well, the $500 exemption is going to apply to a small number of stations, but there are over 4,000 FM stations in the country, including some of mine, that would not fall under that exemption. And there are a lot of small market broadcasters right now that are barely hanging on. And understand, it's not $500, it's another $500 on top of FCC regulatory fees and all the PROs that we're already paying. Radio stations are being inundated with PRO fees. Senator Tillis and I have had this conversation for the last couple of years. The whole landscape The ecosystem that's worked for 100 years is under strain because streaming services are a problem for the performers. They're a problem for radio stations. We are competing with streaming services that are owned by the largest big tech companies in the world. And our revenues as a result of that are dropping. BIA, who is the organization that tracks revenues for the broadcast industry, this is a very important fact. You may not be aware. Since 2019, radio's gross receipt revenue has decreased 20%, projected to be down another 5% this year, 3.5% next year. So small market radio stations can't take any more fees. It's not 500, it's another 500 on top of everything else that we're paying. And I'll tell you, anybody that thinks $500 is a small chunk of change has never had to run a small market radio station.
Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hinton, you'd ask if